The sun had fallen hard on the high desert that evening, flattening the colors of the land until everything looked the same shade of dust and bone. Illy Mercer stood on the porch of his ranch house, one hand braced on the post, the other holding a tin cup that had long since lost its shine. The wind moved through the scrub with a low, whispering sound, carrying the smell of sage and something older, something that always made him feel watched. He had lived on this land for 12 years, ever since the war took his brother and the cities took his patience. The ranch wasn't much, one house, a barn, a corral, and a well he'd dug with his own hands, but it was enough to keep a man alive and quiet. That was when he saw her. At first, he thought the heat had finally claimed him. A shape stood near the edge of the dry wash, tall and still as a carved post. Then it moved. The shape stepped forward, and the light caught her face. She was enormous, not just tall but broad, shouldered, powerfully built, her presence bending the space around her. Her skin was dark, weathered like old leather, and her hair hung in thick black ropes down her back. She wore little more than worn buckskin, torn and stained, and her feet were bare on the stone and thorns. Illy's hand drifted, without thought, toward the rifle leaning against the porch rail. The woman stopped when she was still 30 paces away. Her eyes locked on him, black and sharp, and he felt a pressure in his chest, as if the air itself had thickened. Apache. He knew it in his bones. Everyone out here did. She raised one hand slowly, palm open, not a greeting, not a threat, something in between. Then she swayed. The movement was small, almost graceful, but Illy saw it. She staggered, caught herself, then dropped to one knee. Her head bowed, and a sound escaped her throat, low, dry, almost like the creak of an old door. Thirst. Illy hesitated. He had heard stories. Everyone had. Stories of raids, of burned homesteads, of men found with arrows in their backs, and women taken into the hills. Stories of giants among the Apache, warriors so big they seemed carved from stone, moving faster than men half their size. This woman looked like one of those stories, but she was alone, and she was dying of thirst. Illy set the rifle down. He stepped off the porch slowly, deliberately, making sure his hands were visible. The woman's head lifted just enough for one eye to watch him, unblinking. "Easy," he said, though he doubted she understood. His voice sounded small in the open land. He walked to the well, drew a bucket, and filled the tin cup. The water sloshed, clear and cold. He carried it toward her, each step measured. When he was close enough, he stopped and set the cup on a flat stone between them. He nudged it forward with his boot and stepped back. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the woman moved. She didn't crawl or reach weakly. She flowed forward, controlled even in her weakness. She picked up the cup, sniffed it once, then drank. Not like a starving animal, but like someone who understood restraint. Still, the water vanished quickly, her throat working, her shoulders rising and falling. When she finished, she held the cup for a second longer, then set it down carefully. Her eyes met his again. Something passed between them then. Not gratitude exactly, and not threat. Recognition, maybe. The acknowledgement that a line had been crossed. She stood. Even weakened, she towered over him by a head. Without a word, she turned and walked back toward the wash, disappearing into the gathering dark as silently as she had come. Illy stood there long after she was gone, the empty cup at his feet, his heart hammering. That night he slept poorly. He dreamed of drums and firelight, of shadows moving along ridgelines, of eyes watching from the dark. More than once, he woke with his hand clutching at nothing, his breath shallow. When dawn came, it came wrong. The desert was too quiet, no birds, no insects, even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Ellie stepped onto the porch and froze. They were everywhere, men warriors, ringed his ranch at a distance, standing on ridges, among rocks, beside the corral. They were painted for war, red and black markings stark against their skin. Feathers and bone adorned their hair, spears and bows gleamed in the early light. 300 of them at least. Apache. His mouth went dry, his mind raced uselessly. There was no escape, no defense. The ranch was a speck in a sea of enemies. At the front stood the woman from the night before. In the morning light, she seemed even larger. Her posture was straight, her movements controlled, her strength restored. She carried a long spear, its tip darkened with age and use. Around her neck hung a necklace of carved stone and claw. She raised her spear slightly. The warriors did not move closer, but the message was clear. He was contained. Ellie stepped off the porch again, slowly, just as he had the night before. He did not reach for a weapon. There was no point. The woman spoke then. Her voice was deep, resonant, carrying easily across the open ground. The words were in Apache, harsh and musical at once. He did not understand them, but he understood the tone. It was not a war cry. She stepped forward alone, closing the distance until she stood a few paces from him. She studied him as if weighing his soul. Then in halting English, rough but clear, she spoke. "You gave water?" She said. "Yes." Ellie replied. His voice shook despite his effort. "You were thirsty?" She nodded once. "You did not fear?" "That's not true." He said honestly. "I feared plenty." A flicker crossed her eyes, amusement, respect. She turned and spoke to the warriors behind her. A murmur rippled through them like wind through grass. She faced him again. "My name," she said, touching her chest, "is Nanton Lupa, wolf woman." Illy swallowed. Illy Mercer. She studied the house, the barn, the well. "This is your land. It's where I live," he said carefully. She nodded again. "My people saw you many times. You take only what you need. You do not hunt our trails. You do not poison the water. I just want to be left alone," Illy said. A long pause followed. Finally, Nanton Lupa planted the butt of her spear into the ground. "Last night," she said, "you saved my life." Illy frowned. "It was just water. For us," she said, her voice hardening, "water is life." She lifted her hand, and one of the warriors stepped forward, carrying a bundle wrapped in hide. He placed it at her feet and stepped back. She nudged it toward Illy with her foot. "A gift," she said, "for life given." Illy did not touch it. "What happens now?" he asked. Her gaze was steady. "Now, my warriors see the man who gave water to their strongest. They see if he is brave or foolish." The circle tightened just a little. Illy straightened his back. "I don't want trouble." Nanton Lupa's lips curved just slightly. "Then you will have none." She turned and shouted a command. As one, the warriors relaxed, weapons lowered. The tension in the air eased, though it did not vanish. She looked back at him one last time. "If you ever need water," she said, "come to the Red Canyon at the full moon. My people will remember you." Then she turned and walked away. The warriors followed, flowing back into the land like a tide retreating from shore. Within minutes, they were gone. The desert breathed again. Illy stood alone in the dust, the bundle at his feet, his legs trembling now that the danger had passed. He sank onto the porch step and stared at the place where they had been. He never forgot that morning, and in the years that followed, when others vanished from the land, when other ranches burned, Illy Mercer's well remained untouched, because once, in the dying light of a desert evening, he gave water to a giant Apache woman, and 300 warriors never forgot it.